Hello, my name is Manny Vargas, and welcome to Heroes, Helms, and High Magic. Heroes, Helms, and High Magic is a cooperative tactic-style combat game where a party of adventurers journey to find a great monster and defeat it. During this video, I'll do my best to give you a breakdown of the game in brief, and when it'll be available on Tabletop Simulator for free. As this is a digital board game, most of the setup will have already been done for you. However, we'll still take the time to go over the board itself. I'll break down each section and the cards that are correlated with those sections. Starting at the top left, we have two bags. One contains all of the player tokens, the other contains the player character boards. Below that, we have the various reward cards. Items, weapons, gear. Next to those are memory and event cards. We'll cover those a bit later. Below those, we have the quick reference cards. I attempted to put as many of the game's rules on these cards as possible, so that way at a glance, you're able to look at a particular icon or a particular phrase and be able to quickly read out the rules. In the middle is the battle map. All battles will take place on the grid table. Above that is the journey board and the journey token. This is how you'll track your progress during your adventure. You'll notice a pretty consistent flow. Battle, event, camp. Rinse and repeat until the end. Above the map are battle map tokens. During combat, the terrain will have its own things to keep track of, and these will help you keep track of them. This includes monster turns as well as various traps or terrain bonuses. Moving over to the right, and arguably the busiest part of the game board, is the monster section. First are the encounter cards. There are 15 encounters in the encounter deck, and there are 2 difficulty tiers. The game always begins with the same starting battle. This is meant to be a relatively easy battle that'll introduce new players to combat, and provide them with a bit of starting gear for the rest of the adventure. Then there are the monster cards. These will contain the monster's various abilities, as well as their HP and armor. Similar to the encounter cards, there are 2 different tiers of monsters. There are hopefully enough encounters and monsters to keep the battles feeling fresh. Below those cards are 6 hit point counters. There are no encounters that go over 6 enemies. Next to those counters are 1 6-sided dice and an armor break token. We'll talk more about that later. Finally, there are the boss cards. A boss is chosen at the beginning of the game and arrive at the end of the journey. They are fast, powerful, and each one has a unique gimmick to keep an eye out for. Now that we're done with the overview, let's move on to picking our characters. There are 8 character classes to pick from and 2 character tokens to choose from. Each class brings a little bit of their own flavor to the battles. While players are free to pick whatever class they like, the booklet suggests some general rules that the party might want to consider to balance out the party. If you're thinking in RPG terms, think of it as your warrior, mage, and thief combo. If you're looking for some simple classes to get you started, I recommend the paladin, the fighter, and the rogue. They have simple enough setups and simple enough abilities to jump right into the game with. Once everyone has decided on their class, place the character boards below the battle map. At the top left of each character board is the quick setup steps. Every class begins with starting attributes that are likely to increase through the journey. To touch briefly on attributes, you have 6 in total. 4 have the same functions, but vigor and storage, the ones at the bottom, are unique in how they work. Starting from left to right, top to bottom, might is how strong you are, agility, how agile you are, knowledge, how much of the world you know, and faith, how in tune to the gods you are. You may notice that there are some outlines on some of these marked spots. These are called milestones. As you reach them, they'll provide benefits in and out of combat. We'll go over that soon. Now let's talk about those 2 unique attributes. Vigor is pure hit points. The more vigor you have, the more hit points you have. All classes begin with 3 hit points, so any classes with starting vigor add additional hit points. The math has already been done for you in the quick setup process. Storage space determines how much a character is able to carry. By default, all classes can carry one thing, whether it's gear, weapons, or an item. Some classes begin with more storage space than others, and this is crucial, as equipment or items you can't carry are unable to come with you for the rest of the journey. Returning to our quick setup steps, there are 2 equipment sets you can choose from at the bottom, which dictate your starting gear. It's nothing fancy, but serves as functional. Some classes may start with a weapon and shield, while others just start with a weapon and maybe an accessory. This leads us neatly into equipment. At the top of your board, there's slots reserved exactly for that. We have attempted to design the cards and the equipment slots with ease of use in mind. You want to be able to look neatly across the top of your board to determine what dice you're going to be using for a particular role. Place your starting equipment in the correlating slots. Each equipment card has an icon determining what slot it takes. Finally, mark your hit points, your armor, and your mana. Hit points, as previously mentioned, are 3 plus vigor. Similarly, mana is always 3 at the very beginning. To determine what your starting armor is, look at your current equipment based on what you picked on the starter table. Any of these red icons next to the shield icon are your armor. Add them up, and add that many slots to your board. It's time to decide which boss the party will be battling at the end of the journey. There are 3 bosses available. If you prefer to keep it random, give them a shuffle and have someone pick blindly. Now that the boss is picked, let's start talking about combat. The first encounter is always the same: 2 soot soldiers and a soot archer. For the full details on the battle, we look to our combat setup card. The top of the card shows the positioning of the monsters, the players, and any unique environment tokens. The red markers are numbered in correlation with the red section below, which dictates which enemies will be taking those spots. Now is a good time to take the monster cards and place them under the counters. Try to have the monsters lined up in numerical order, so 1 to 6, left to right, and then make sure their health is marked on the counters. The combat condition section in the red dictates any starting conditions of the battle. In this case, we have readied weapon. It reads that position 3 begins with an additional white dice on their next attack only. So to help mark this, we'll take a spare white dice and place it on the monster card. In the green section, we have something on the map that could help in the battle. Something shimmery. If a player stands on the green square, you draw an item card. Lastly, let's make sure our players are placed. Any section in blue is where the players can begin. Every combat card is a bit different, so you won't always have the luxury of having your tank up front. However, as this battle has the party more or less together, we're going to have the paladin up front, the adventurer just beneath him, and then the rogue at the bottom. Now that we're all set up, it's time to start talking about the core of the game, the combat. Unless otherwise specified by the combat conditions, the players will always go first. The players may choose what order they go in, but if you want to keep it simple, counterclockwise is always a good way to go. We begin with our adventurer. The adventurer has his choice of 3 actions, all of which he can do once per turn. With his move action, he moves 2 squares, and equipped only with a frying pan, declares an attack on the soot archer. Looking at his weapon, he sees a white dice and a might symbol. The white dice is the dice he gains simply for having the weapon equipped. The might symbol is the milestone he will add to that attack. The adventurer begins with only 1 mark in might, so he'll not be able to reach that first milestone, and thus he'll only be rolling 1 dice for this attack. With some luck, the adventurer rolls a 2, the highest value on a white dice. We then go over to the monster card. Each monster has hit points and armor. Armor deflects damage up to its current amount, and any damage that passes it is dealt directly to its hit points. As the soot archer only has 1 armor, it takes 1 point of damage. The adventurer is relieved that he targeted the archer, as the soot soldiers seem to have 2 armor, something he wouldn't have been able to get through even with his high roll. Next is the paladin. The paladin moves alongside the adventurer and plans an attack. He looks over at his weapon. It's similar to the adventurer's frying pan, but there are 2 things to note. Firstly, the paladin has more marks in might, which means when he adds up his dice, he gets 1 dice and an additional white dice for reaching the white milestone. This applies with future milestones too. If a green milestone is met, the player not only rolls the green milestone dice, but it also rolls the previous white milestone dice. Secondly, the weapon, the heavy mace, has an effect called armor break. Looking over at the quick reference card, it reads that after damage is calculated, the monster's armor is reduced. This is good news, as the paladin will make it easier for his allies to deal damage later. But he still wants to soften up the monster a bit more. He declares an attack and announces that he'll be using his class action, Holy Smite. By spending 1 mana, he'll add a green dice to his attack. Looking at the class action again, he sees that he can spend an additional mana to upgrade the dice to a purple. Adding up his dice, he gets a white dice from his weapon, a white dice from the milestone, and now a purple dice from his class action. Touching briefly on class actions, they come in 3 forms: normal actions, reactions, and free actions. Normal class actions are done in place of your attack action. Reactions can be used as long as the criteria is met. And free actions can be used anytime so long as you have the mana to use them. In the case of our paladin, he declared an attack, and because he did so, he met the criteria on the reaction. Let's return to the battle. The paladin rolls his dice and scores a huge roll, adding up to 7 points of damage. Because of its armor, the Soot Soldier only takes 5 points of damage. However, thanks to the paladin's weapon, he is marked with 1 armor loss, making the next attack against him easier. To help track this, we'll grab an armor break token and we'll place it on the Soot Soldier. Moving to our last player, the Rogue. Being closer to the item, the Rogue detours from the battle and moves towards the green spot. This allows them to draw an item from the item deck. Lucky for them, they drew a thorny chestnut. Since the Rogue is too far away to take an attack action, they'll use their item action. Both the Paladin and the Adventurer had a weapon with a melee icon, meaning they can only attack enemies surrounding them. However, this item has a different icon, the ranged attack icon, meaning this attack can be used at any distance. The Rogue aims for the weakened Soot Soldier and deals plenty of extra damage. However, the Soot Soldier remains standing. All players have now exhausted their turns, which means it's now time for the monster phase. Monsters have their own behavioral system they use to determine their attacks. To help move this along, it's good having a player already familiar with the rules to be able to run the monster rules for the monsters, to keep things quick. Starting with the first Soot Soldier, the player will roll a 6-sided dice for the Soot Soldier, and it lands on a 4. The Soot Soldier will then go step by step through its process. You can reference the quick reference cards for monster actions to help here. The monster will move to the nearest possible target. If this is contested by 2 targets, the players can determine who gets targeted. For players, melee attacks require them to be adjacent to a monster, and this means any of the surrounding tiles around them. Monsters behave slightly different. A monster will always attempt to move to the space above, next to, or below the players. As the monsters have no limits to how far they can move, if the closest possible spot is occupied, it'll take the next available spot. In the event a player is completely surrounded, the monster will pick the second closest target. So, as the paladin has nothing blocking it from its closest possible position, the monster moves into position and rolls 1 white dice, according to its attack. The monster rolls a result of 1. The paladin now chooses between either dodging the attack or defending the attack. They choose to defend. Looking at their equipment, they find 1 defend icon with 1 white dice. Whatever the paladin rolls with this white dice will reduce the incoming damage. And thankfully, they managed to roll a result of 1, blocking the attack completely. However, looking at the monster attack again, it does have an effect. It pushes the target 2 squares back. This effect occurs regardless of whether or not the attack actually did any damage. With the paladin now pushed back 2 squares, our adventurer is left without a bodyguard. The second Soot Soldier, already in position, rolls his 6-sided dice to determine what attack he does. The Soot Soldier rolls a 6. It'll attack with both a white and a green dice. Without any defend icons, the adventurer is unable to block any of the incoming damage. He could attempt a dodge roll, but his highest value dice would be a white dice, and the dodge threshold for the monster's attack is a 3. The Soot Soldier rolls its dice and lands a result of 4. The adventurer has a third option though, and he uses it. He declares his class action, Not So Fast. It reads, after an enemy rolls their damage dice, change 1 dice to its lowest value. You can spend additional mana to lower additional dice. The adventurer decides to take the green dice and lower it to the lowest value, bringing it down to 1. With 1 and 1, 2 damage seems a lot better than 4. The adventurer navigates to his board to calculate the damage. He has 1 armor and 5 hit points. Unlike the monsters, armor for the players acts as a second source of hit points. So this is reduced to 0, as the adventurer only had 1 armor mark, and he takes the rest of the damage to his hit points. We move on to the last monster, the Soot Archer. The monster rolls a result of 1, which means they'll be performing a long shot. Following the steps, the creature remains in position and targets the furthest possible target, in this case, the Rogue. Remember that combat condition we read at the beginning of the battle, where the position 3 monster begins with an additional white dice to their next attack? It's time to follow through on that. The Soot Archer will roll his normal 2 dice and add an additional white dice. 3 dice total. The Rogue quickly looks at their equipment. They don't have any defend icons to reduce the damage, but they do have a dodge icon, though it's 1 lone white dice. Looking at the monster card, each attack the monster has a dodge threshold. This is a static number that the player must meet if they want to dodge the attack entirely. The rogue does not have a lot of health to begin with, so their best option is to attempt to avoid the attack altogether. Before rolling, the player announces that they'll use the rogue's class action, Quick Hands. By spending 1 mana, they can take 1 dice from the enemy's damage roll and include it in their dodge roll. The rogue steals the dice that rolled the value of 2. The dodge value of the monster attack is 2. The rogue rolls and fails. But thanks to the rogue's clever use of his class action, he'll only be taking 2 damage, having stolen one of the dice. With all monsters now completing their turns, we go back to the players. I know that was a lot to throw at you, but I promise we won't play out much more of this. We'll talk about one other thing before moving away from combat. We'll talk about flanking. On the player's turn, the rogue thinks they have an idea. They move 2 squares next to the adventurer, and now adjacent to some of the enemies. The rogue announces that they'll use their class action, Covering Ground, which is a free action. It reads, after moving into an ally or enemy's adjacent space, move to a free adjacent square. The rogue chooses to move behind the second position Soot Soldier, now directly opposite the adventurer. The rogue declares an attack with their dagger. They collect their 1 weapon dice and additional white dice from their agility milestone. Then, because the party is flanking the monster, they'll add an additional white dice to their roll. That gives the rogue 3 dice. Deciding to go all in, he declares his class action, Sneak Attack, which again he is able to use as Covering Ground was considered a free action. The rogue now has 5 dice and rolls 5 damage. The battle goes on until either all the players are defeated or all the monsters are defeated. We will conclude combat here and assume the players won and move to the next phase of the game. After the players are victorious, they return to the combat setup card and look at the rewards section. In this case, they get 2 gear cards and 1 weapon card. The party draws a starter wand, a breastplate, and a cloth bracer. Some gear do have attribute requirements before being able to equip them. While the breastplate may be good for the adventurer or rogue who lack the ability to block incoming damage, only the paladin meets the attribute requirements to equip it. Just so long as everyone in the party has at least 1 weapon equipped, the party can exchange equipment for free. The paladin offers the round shield to the adventurer, who does meet the requirement to equip it, but their weapon requires 2 hands to use, so the adventurer will have to pass. The rogue decides that they'll take the starter wand. Rogues begin with 1 mark in knowledge, and if the rogue's lucky, maybe they'll be able to equip it later as a side weapon. Clear the board and move the journey token to the next phase, the event phase. First, determine what player is going to undergo the event. The party decides to let the adventurer begin, keeping to their counterclockwise rule from before. The adventurer draws the large event card and reads the blue section out to the party. They then read the challenge threshold out loud. Might attribute challenge threshold 4. The adventurer then must choose 1 ally to undertake the adventure with them. They first consider the paladin, who's already reached a milestone in might. For events, the players, regardless of if they have a milestone or not, always roll 1 dice. Since the paladin has a white dice milestone met, the 2 of them would roll 3 dice collectively, much better odds of success. However, the adventurer notices something below the card. Rogue Class Exception, Instant Success. If the adventurer chooses to take the rogue, then they don't have to roll dice at all. The adventurer decides to make the rogue their ally, leading to instant success on the event. They look at the rewards, +1 agility for the rogue, and +1 faith for the other player. While the adventurer doesn't gain a whole lot from a point in faith, the rogue gains a whole additional milestone from +1 agility, now being able to add a green dice to all further rolls that use the agility milestone. We now move to the last phase, camping. Each player recovers 2 hit points and all of their armor and all of their mana. This is the benefit of armor over vigor. Armor will always recover fully. Finally, the party chooses 2 players to draw from the memory deck. The memory deck is full of objects of great emotional importance, enough to draw out power from the characters. The party decides that the paladin and adventurer will draw, as the rogue is pretty happy with his new green milestone dice already. The players draw their cards and read them out loud to the party, and place them on their board in the memory cards section. They then add any bonuses given from the cards. In the case of our paladin and his broken glasses, he has the choice between 1 might or 1 faith. Now seeing how the event cards work, the paladin opts to go for a point in faith. While the point in might be more beneficial for battles, the point in faith means that when they come across an event card that involves a faith challenge, he'll have an extra dice to spare to help with the rolls. The adventurer is happy about his smithy hammer, which gives him a much needed +1 to his might, now allowing him an extra white dice when he attacks. The party now feels stronger and more equipped for the next battle. Move the journey token to the next battle and flip the next combat card. Combat, Event, Camp. This will continue until you reach the end of the board where you'll flip a Tier 2 combat card. This will be a test to see if you're ready for the next map of battles. If you manage to make it all the way through the first map and through the second map, then there's the boss waiting for you at the very end. We will end the tutorial here. To close, I'll talk shortly about the project altogether. For those who would prefer to get right to playing, it's now available in Tabletop Simulator Workshop. Totally free. I hope you enjoy it. For those still listening, this is a personal passion project. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't get into the tactics genre of games until much later in my life, though I wish I had now. This project was an attempt to see if I can make a simple enough system that folks could enjoy with some friends around a virtual table. I don't see this ever becoming a physical game. There's too many moving parts and too many dice for me to see as something feasibly doable at a large scale, so I'm happy with it just being virtual. All of the illustrations were hand-drawn by me. Nearly all 250 of them. From the event cards, memories, and equipments to the tokens and small things like just the images behind the cards. It was a day and night effort. That was the fun part, and once that was done, the rest of my time was spent vigorously playtesting. If you out there are trying to make a board game, please give this part as much of your time and patience as possible. You have no idea how many little things come up as a result of just playing your game to nauseam. I haven't totally decided if I'm done with the project yet. I like the idea of Tier 3 battles where the enemies are very difficult and it comes down to a mix of high-end tactics thinking and some lucky dice rolls to be able to overcome them. You can see glimpses of this in some of the Tier 2 encounter cards. There are some enemies that seem to have much bigger stats than some of the regular enemies. These are Tier 3 ideas, and there's only a few of them as a result. I also have about 5 additional character classes sketched out, some of which you may even find in the event cards. I also have like a 6th one on the mind. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition. If I were to commit to making those characters, it would also come with new hand-drawn events, weapons, gears, memory cards. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing, is my philosophy on it. That said, it's time for a bit of reality. I was really only able to work on this project due to circumstance. I had quit my job recently to run off and get married, and my wife has been supporting the both of us. I asked her if I could work on this personal passion project, and she said yes. So she's been managing a lot of the financial heavy lifting. I believe there's more than enough game here as it stands to enjoy with friends, and also to put in my work portfolio. That said, in about 3 weeks' time, I'll take a look at how the game is doing, and I might decide to do a crowdfunding event for a one-time content boost, including everything I mentioned above. If that does happen, I'll do my best to post it where people can see it, and people can get to it, maybe even updating the board game to include a link to it. If you don't really want to support the game, but you like maybe the art, I will put up a link to Akara, and I haven't at time of writing decided if I want to make a Ko-fi, but if I decided to, it's going to be there in the links as well, if you happen to prefer the tip jar idea. And with that, I think I've eaten up enough of your time. This has been Heroes, Helms, and High Magic. Again, available free on Tabletop Simulator. Link below. I apologize. One more thing. Some of you may have actually seen the teaser trailer I made for this game, which was inspired by Art Fight 2026. While it's not mentioned in the tutorial video, that boss does exist in the game, so you will be able to find them in there. For those of you who aren't familiar with Art Fight, it is a artist-driven community event where a whole bunch of artists sign up for it, they are broken into teams, and then they draw original characters from the opposite team. And every year, Art Fight has a theme, and this year's theme is comedy, tragedy, and mystery. I was pretty inspired by that, so I decided to make a 4th boss just before the finish line. I'll be sure to include a link to Art Fight as well. It's a really cool thing. Highly recommend going to check out the site.